Welcome to episode 90, Farm to Table, from Buzzword to Climate Solution. That's right, folks.
Woo!
Episode 90. We are 10 episodes away from episode 100.
Episode 100.
100 sustainability topics defined. So I'm your host, Cecilia.
And I'm your host, Nethra. And today we're going to be talking about all things farm to table. What it means to source sustainably, what it means to eat seasonally, and what does this term mean in general? We will also dive into some issues with major supply chain trends in food production, such as emissions associated with distribution and nutrient loss with major production. And then we will wrap up our episode with an interview from Ariane Daguin, who I definitely just totally butchered her name. But she is a world-renowned chef, highly decorated, who has led by example in her industry and really focused on sustainability, quality, and sourcing of her ingredients. She will talk all about how the company she founded revolutionized the market and overall food industry by bringing organic, farm-to-table, free-range, and humanely raised meats to the market, as well as just regeneratively grown produce, and really laid the foundation for the farm-to-table movement. So we're really thrilled to have her here. This is a bit of a fangirl moment for me, just coming back from Paris and culinary school. So let's do this thing, Cecilia.
Let's get into it. Okay, so first we'll start this episode off by defining what farm to table means and looking at how it compares and contrasts to the current food system, as well as highlighting some of the major sustainability trade-offs within each production system. We'll also get into some of the topics that Nethra described earlier, like what does eating seasonally and sourcing sustainably really mean, and what are some of the major issues with large-scale production. And we'll wrap up the episode with the climate and the business case for farm to table. So without further ado, what is farm to table? Is it a trend? Has it been around forever? Nethra, our culinary master, please help us define this.
So I'm not going to lie, the term farm to table kind of irritates me a little bit.
Uh-oh.
It's, again, one of those unregulated terms similar to reef safe that we mentioned in our previous episode where we talked about sunscreen. And while those terms are important, they can definitely be misused, and farm to table is no exception, because isn't everything technically farm to table?
So confusing. We love to be myth busting on this podcast, definers. But I mean, I get it. Technically, this soy milk did come from a farm and it's now on my table. And even if that farm is monoculture and, a mega farm, what's going on here?
Right. And cue our day-old mom rant about being an informed consumer. Prepare to be sick of us, definers. Obviously, though, we are talking about the more formalized farm-to-table movement, which I do love and appreciate, regardless of the irony and inherent disconnection to nature and our food systems that's ironically and unintentionally highlighted by this movement. It is about bringing us back to how food systems should operate. It's a social movement. Farm to Table is a social movement that promotes serving locally grown food directly from its origin to the consumers and has an emphasis on organic and naturally grown food and processes such as regenerative agriculture, soil-focused practices, and rotating crops based on seasonality. I mean, farm to table has been around since humanity existed. Back then, it was just called life.
Oh, life. Can we talk about how funny this actually is? I mean, could you imagine explaining farm to table to our Mexican and Indian great-grandmothers? They'd be like, what's going on, girl? What is this?
They'd be like, we had this. Why are you calling it that?
Literally, like, this isn't new.
Exactly. And my grandmother lives with us, and she
cute.
I know, she's adorable.
I've seen the Instagram. Is she in the Instagram Reels? Is that Granny?
That is Granny. We call her Pati.
Oh my God, cute.
Pati means grandmother in Tamil, which is like my background. And she lives with us and basically runs like a farm to table operation out of our kitchen.
That's what I've seen on the Instagram.
Yeah, like she's making the most locally sourced mint chutney you could possibly imagine.
Okay, I love this.
Right? And I can appreciate this awakening to understand the way that we are doing things can be done better. And before we get into the modern farm-to-table movement, we do need to discuss the perceptions of the rise and fall of processed and industrialized food systems that we know today. So I would also like to point out that we all have benefited from the current food industry too. As much as I like to sit here and criticize it, that is the only way that I've known food to exist and be supplied to me and really come to me on a daily basis, right? Access to certain foods year round. Industrialization in some ways has aided the ability to feed more people, whether the side effects of that are harmful or not. We must acknowledge how these can be considered as advancements as well. We are never trying to demonize things here on the podcast because, as my favorite geography professor from UGA used to say, hi, Professor Sarmiento, if you're listening, a good environmentalist and informed consumer always says it depends when questioning something.
I love that because I've been to a lot of like guest lectures, and whenever would think of like a super hard pressing question you want to ask them, they always hit you back with the it depends. Okay, media training, love and aware king or queen.
It's an annoying answer because it sounds very politicized and it's like, okay, just tell me. Just let me know. But
tell me. What are you hiding? What are you gatekeeping about farm to table here? But no, I love that. What a good quote. So what are the modern food systems? Are they bad? And is farm to table the answer? Nethra, please, what do you think?
Well, Cecilia, it depends.
Oh my God. But
right? Scalability, accessibility, current subsidies supporting foods that are not nutritious, and obviously the very real legislative hurdles, the current climate crisis, farmers' rights, people trying to feed their families the best way they know how. These things all matter. So yeah, of course it depends. But in the perfect world, in the world I see for the future, personally, eating locally and regeneratively is such a beautiful solution for human and planet health.
Beautifully said, Nethra. And the history of how we got here also plays a major role, and it matters into all those things that you mentioned. So before farm to table was a trendy buzzword, it was just how people ate. It was, we won't go as far as the beginning of humanity, but let's rewind to the 1900s. Back then, a lot of Americans were concerned about how fresh their food actually was. As industrialization increased and people moved from rural areas to cities, they became disconnected to their food sources. Urban residents became dependent on middlemen and supply chains and had less control over where their food actually came from. And during this time, food was often shipped long distances without refrigeration, so it would spoil or arrive wilted, stale, or contaminated.
Yes, I love a history lesson. Let's get into it. So
let's do it. I love it too.
Also, at that time, food regulation was minimal, right? So many products were mislabeled and there was a growing public concern over food safety. This ultimately led to the creation of the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906 and the Meat Inspection Act in 1906. Throwback to reading The Jungle by Urban Sinclair in high school that really painted this picture in a scary kind of way.
Dang, I think I missed out on that educational experience of The Jungle. I did not get to read that in high school.
Timeless American classic.
I'm gonna have to send my counselor an email. What happened there? But anyway, surprisingly, the U.S. Postal Service stepped in during this time. Between 1950 and 1920, the USPS actually ran a program that let farmers ship fresh produce like eggs and poultry directly to the consumers. So you could literally get your butter or tomatoes delivered to your doorstep from the farm.
Dang, farm to doorstep. I love that. An early and locally sourced Instacart. Let's petition to bring this back.
No, seriously.
But this Instacart farm to doorstep type of thing didn't really last long as transportation infrastructure improved. Think your railroads, your highways. Thank you, President Eisenhower, for that. And refrigerated trucks, people started relying more on mass distributed food. So by the 1930s and 1940s, with more Americans moving to urban areas, the appetite for ultra-fresh farm goods kind of faded out. And the new shiny, ultra-processed candies and treats coupled with the marketing companies really capitalizing on this led to a pretty slippery slope.
Oh my God, we cannot get into the sweet treats. That is my weakness right there. But this all brings us to the 1950s, aka the golden age of convenience. Processed foods exploded. Swanson rolled out the first ever TV dinner in 1953, and it sold over 10 million units in just 1 year. Americans were watching TV, and the influence of marketing that Nethra mentioned earlier was really influencing the food industry entirely. And we could seriously do a whole episode on, the TV dinner and everything about this, but we won't get into it right now.
Right. Like just the marketing behind like kid cuisine and Lunchables, like I need to sue those people because I'm pretty sure that's why I have an autoimmune condition to this day. Like all that processed food.
So processed. Like, I remember eating Lunchables, and even as a kid in fourth grade, I'd be like, what is this meat? Is this real meat?
Yeah, I'm like, why is it flopping like that?
I hate that. That just brought back such a vision to my head of it flopping around. No.
The cracker stacker box.
Stop it.
That pizza box was criminal. It was literally like a tortilla with ketchup and they called it pizza.
Like, why? Why?
But it was so fun. It was so fun.
It was an experience.
And that's kind of like how these foods sort of make it, right? Especially in the post-war boom of the 1950s, fast food chains were popping up, canned goods were everywhere, and electric kitchens promised housewives more free time, right? Fresh food, that was more effort than people wanted.
Yeah, and this is when McDonald's started too. However, in the 50s, McDonald's was using different ingredients. For example, the fries were made using only 3 ingredients: potatoes, beef tallow, and salt. And now they're made with extremely complex vegetable oils, preservatives, and additives. And the ingredient list has literally quadrupled to accommodate mass production. But that's a conversation for a different time as well. Back to the history lesson timeline lore. By the 1960s, America was kind of an all-in on industrialized processed food. The farm-to-table ethos and mindset basically vanished for a while, but now the conversation is back.
Ooh, love a good comeback story. So this comeback is very interesting in particular because it's incredible how much food is tied to global events like wars. During the 60s and 70s, hippie subculture started to boom across America. And these quote-unquote hippie ideals included the rejection of commercialization and commercialism and materialism, really causing general disapproval for the industrialized food production practices of the time.
And also during this time, Rachel Carson wrote her notoriously famous book. If you're an environmentalist and you took environmental science in high school or college, you definitely heard about this book.
Classic.
Silent Spring, published in 1962, outlined the devastating effects of chemical insecticides. If you haven't read it, it exposed how pesticides and chemicals weren't just doing their job and stopping, diseases spread by pests, but they were actually leaching into waterways and affecting wildlife and human health. She specifically focused on DDT, a common pesticide at the time, and how it was thinning out the eggshells of bald eagles and severely declining their populations. And, as an American, you don't want to hear that it's thinning out the eggshells of bald eagles. That's criminal.
Right. Not our national bird, not our national mascot.
No.
But Rachel Carson really was that girl. She was
so brat.
Right. Oh my God. All of the non-Gen Zers listening to this podcast are going to be like, what does that even mean?
They're like, what's going on?
Well, she really was an icon of the time. Silent Spring was one of the books that really took the environmental movement to the next level. And for the first time, it really showed people that humans don't exist in a silo. And these toxic chemicals affect us and other organisms. So from here, we saw the first Earth Day in 1970 and the call for radical change. And in 1971, thanks to one other power boss woman who also challenged the frozen food status quo, Chef Alice Waters, she opened up a restaurant called Chez Panisse in Berkeley, California, and it's now considered the birthplace of the modern farm-to-table movement in the United States.
Okay, Chef Alice Waters, she is also that girl. And love to see incredible women challenging the status quo. So inspiring. What made Chez Panisse different was its commitment to locally grown organic ingredients served on a seasonal menu. It wasn't just about convenience, it was about community, taste, and sustainability. Chef Waters was deeply influenced by her time living in France. Okay, Nethra, kind of a similar lore to you.
Right.
And she experienced tight-knit food systems where think farmers markets, daily fresh bread, and deep cultural respect for the origins of food. Nathan, I'm sure you can relate to this.
Honestly, yes. I talk about this all the time. During my time in France, I felt like I was barely bloated. Every time I would go to even one of the classic supermarkets there, for example, Monoprix, I would notice that like everything said that it came from France. And I was like, wow, this is a really interesting like culture.
That's amazing.
The food culture in France is beautiful. But
No, I can imagine. You had me at barely bloated.
oh, yeah, something's different about the bread and the gluten there. I don't know what it is, but going back to Chef Alice Waters, I mean, in an interview with CNN, she talked about wanting to escape what she called the land of frozen food that America had become during the 1950s and 60s. And Chez Panisse was her rebellion. Waters helped spark a cultural shift that reconnected people with where their food comes from and why that matters.
Such a great history lesson right there, Nethra. I believe we killed that.
Killed it.
To summarize for you definers, there were four main concerns amongst the American public that pushed this transition to food sovereignty. Number one, industrialization of food and urbanization. Number two, food safety scandals and a lack of regulation. Number three, the rise of industrialized packaged foods. And number four, new technology raised expectations. Think refrigerators and less time for food to be delivered and such.
Right. And I'm sure some of these concerns continue to persist today. So let's chat about some of the differences between the two food production systems and what we can do as consumers. But before that, quick break from our news for our new segment, Burning Questions.
Somebody call 911. Shawty fire burning on the dance floor.
These are lightning round questions, so answer with us, no overthinking, and just the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready, Cecilia?
I'm so ready. Let's do it, Nethra. First question for you definers and for you, Nethra. If carbon emissions were a food, what would they be?
Grease.
Grease.
Cecilia, what's one ingredient you refuse to cook with?
Seafood. But because I don't like it. Nethra, what's your favorite seasonal vegetable?
Pumpkins.
Ooh, good choice.
Cecilia, what climate solution would you serve at a dinner party? Regenerative agriculture, vertical farming, or lab-grown meat?
Ooh, lab-grown meat. That sounds like an exclusive dinner party. I love it. Nethra, final question. Dream guest to share a locally sourced meal with, dead or alive?
Billie Eilish.
Ooh, that would be an interesting dinner party.
Climate queen. All right, so we've talked about where farm to table came from, but how does it really stack up against mainstream food production in the US?
Let's break it down. We're talking two totally different food systems here. They have different values, different logistics, and definitely different outcomes.
Okay, let's start with food sourcing. So farm to table means buying local, direct from farmers within a 100 to 250 mile radius, so you know where your food is coming from. In contrast, the industrial food systems source from a globalized supply chain, so your lettuce might come from California, your chilies from not your chilies from Apple, but your apples from Chile, and your beef from massive feedlot CAFO-esque operations in the Midwest. And obviously there are nuances here. I live in Georgia, probably within a 100-mile radius of most Purdue chicken and poultry factories. Me getting this might be considered local, but I'm not really getting it directly from a farmer, and it's definitely not sustainable. So it depends. Remember that.
It depends.
And I might make different choices here based on my consumer values.
That's a great point that you bring up, Nethra. And not to sidetrack us here, but the average food mile for produce in the US is around 1,500 miles. So your produce is literally traveling 1,500 miles.
That's crazy.
Even if you believe you're eating seasonally, like eating tomatoes in the summertime, squash in the winter, your tomato probably traveled as far as Mexico or California to get to your local Trader Joe's. I mean, I live in DC. There's definitely not a tomato that's mass produced nearby. Another difference between the two systems, farm to table shortens the supply chain, which reduces transportation emissions, packaging waste, and middlemen. While food in the industrial system travels an average of 1,500 miles from farm to plate, I mean, you can imagine there's a lot of fuel and a lot of emissions in that supply chain itself.
And a lot of miles. Like, I'm desperate to get my food, like a travel card, so I could rack up these points. Like, this is crazy. I guess that kind of brings me to my next point, which is eating seasonally. This is one of the pillars of the farm to table movement. Eating seasonally means building your meals around what's naturally growing in your region during that season, during that time of year. Think peaches in the summer, strawberries in the summer, kale in the fall. And in industrial food systems, obviously seasons don't really matter. Like, think about how we have strawberries year round. Thanks to cold storage, artificial ripening, global imports, you can find these varieties of produce such as strawberries in January or asparagus in October. And it's crazy because when I go to India, one of my favorite childhood memories was going there every summer, and I would always eat mangoes because I would always go there right when school lets out.
Delicious.
I know, and mangoes were like peak, like May mango season, right? And I went this past December and I was like, okay, I need some mangoes. So I always go there during the summer. They didn't have them. And I'm like, why?
A crime.
Like, why? Like, how is this possible? This is India. And then my grandma was like, oh, it's not in season. Like, they're not going to have it. And it's as simple as that, right? But it's just so interesting because I'm so not used to that growing up in the States.
Yeah, it's definitely a privilege and a convenience that we have here in the States. And, you know, eating seasonally doesn't always have to be like a chore. It can be fun. You're switching up your menu with the season, and, you know, it keeps you on your toes. You always have to plan out a new meal plan. I love it. I think it's fun.
And like, it can be very healthy for you. Like, certain things grow during certain seasons to boost up nutrition and certain things that our body needs during that season. We say this in India all the time, like, where things grow regionally, it supports like the people and the things that you might need. Like, when you're walking in a forest and there's a lot of bugs, like, there's actually a lot of herbs that grow to heal those bites. So it's just, it's a system. Like, nature is very smart. So eating seasonally can be very good for your health as well.
So true. And that actually ties into my next point that I was going to bring up. You mentioned that there is a cost associated with out of season food, often meaning higher emissions, as we talked about in that extended supply chain. But there's also a lower nutritional value and less flavor because it's harvested early and it travels a long distance, it's out of season. Your blueberries probably took about 3 weeks to get to you. And studies show that fruits and vegetables start to decline in nutrient content the moment that they're picked. So when you eat seasonally, not only are you reducing your carbon footprint, but you're also getting food at its peak in terms of flavor and nutrition.
And you're going to hear this so much from Ariane. Like, she says the quality of her dishes are so much higher when she sources locally. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like a win-win to me. It also helps support farmers who are growing produce in line with natural cycles and not industrial demands. I mean, this supports pollinators too, local fauna, so much more.
Even more of a win. We love to see it. So bottom line, definers, eating seasonally isn't just trendy. It's climate smart, community driven, and delicious. So let's continue on the major differences between these two systems. Farming methods is a major difference between the two. Farm to table supports organic, regenerative, and small scale farming, often with minimal to no synthetic chemicals. Meanwhile, industrial agriculture relies heavily on monoculture, pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, and genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, all optimized for yield, not necessarily for health or sustainability.
It's all about the yield and the profit.
All about the yield.
Which brings me to my next point, economies of scale. So here's a catch. Farm to table can be more expensive because it's not mass produced and it doesn't benefit from industrial subsidies. In contrast, the industrial system is built for efficiency, scale, and of course, profit.
Of course.
Not necessarily for nutrition, equity, or sustainability.
Yeah, and to summarize, definers, at its core, farm to table is about reconnection to the food, to the land, and to the people who grow it. It's not that one, is all bad and the other system is all good, but it's about understanding the differences between them to help us make more informed choices. And as consumers, we are advocates for a better food future. As Nethra would say, vote with your dollar.
You know I gotta say it every episode. Vote with your dollar, folks. And we will learn more about how to do this in our interview portion, where we explore some farms and restaurants and how they're trying to bridge this gap and bringing farm-to-table principles into larger scale systems. So do not go anywhere, definers. Hello, Definers. We are sitting here with someone really special, Ariane Daguin. She is widely recognized as the mother of farm to table and a true pioneer in ethical sourcing and sustainable farming. As the founder of, I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, but D'Artagnan. That's definitely wrong. She's going to correct me soon. She revolutionized the US food industry by bringing organic, free range, and humanely raised meats to the market, laying the foundation for the farm to table movement that we know today. So, really great to have her on the podcast. And now, through her farm, All One, One All, which is located in New York, she continues to lead innovations in regenerative agriculture and mentor the next generation of farmers and chefs. So Ariane's impact has also been widely recognized. She's been featured on Anthony Bourdain, Martha Stewart Living. She even won the James Beard Foundation Award and one of the highest distinctions in France, which recognizes great honor and contribution to the nation. So without further ado, I'm going to roll out the red carpet for Ariane.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the name of the company is in French, D'Artagnan. And it's true that it's not the best marketing scheme because when I arrived here, nobody knew how to pronounce it.
Me.
And a lot of chefs, when we started the company, said, "You are Doctor Who?" They thought we were doctor. Which actually is a good thing. When you want to talk to somebody and they think you're a doctor, the voice opens immediately. It goes very easy. Yeah.
I can imagine. And Nethra mentioned earlier that you can be referred to as the mother of farm to table. I'm interested to learn how this came about and what do you define as farm to table and how did you get started in this space?
Basically, I started my company, D'Artagnan, more than 40 years ago.
Okay, wow.
And it was and still is specialized in meat proteins from animals who are well raised. And for us, well raised, that means without stress, without entrance, no any chemical, no nothing medical, nothing artificial, and simply having wholesome foods, a lot of space to roam around and to build muscle, and as little stress as possible, even in the transportation or in the during the process. That helps to have the best meat possible. And basically, that was our mission, and it's still our mission from the beginning. And that's why this reputation came about, because when I started that 40 years ago, I was the only one, basically.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. I had to go and convince farmers, mostly Amish producers in the Pennsylvania region, in Indiana region, and also then after the ranchers and people who raised pheasants and quails and rabbits and ducks. But then more and more chickens, and then beef, venison, wild boar, etc.
Wow, a good range of animals.
Yeah. And to do it the right way. And my priority came from my background. My background is being the daughter and granddaughter and great-granddaughter of restaurateurs, chefs in southwest France, where we revere the good ingredients. For us, eating well, that means finding the right ingredient, trying to find the best ingredient possible. And now, after 40 years, I started a farm with my daughter, Alix, all for one, one for all.
Very cute, yes.
Which was the Musketeers motto, D'Artagnan
Love
motto.
that.
And
I love it.
thanks. And so what I was doing with the animals, we extended to also anything that can be produced and harvested and planted on the soil, with the notion of, instead of ruining the soil, instead of depleting it, or even instead of just sustaining it, we want to regenerate it. And we think that it's the only way for the future of the planet. It's the only way to go.
Right.
And so it is an educational farm where people come. We're open to the public Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, amazing. I love that.
Yeah. It's in Goshen, New York, and we We offer workshops.
Wow.
We offer classes, or people just come and they walk around and they see we have little mailboxes that explain why we're growing things in agroforestry with pasture rotation, why we're using permaculture principles, and why we distill what we distill. So we do things with the plants and the fruits. We distill, we make alcohols and liquors. We
Ooh.
make food with the eggs and all the vegetables, all the fruits. And of course, once in a while, we eat a chicken or a lamb, and so we have a little cafe.
Oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Quite literally farm to table.
Yes, very much. Nethra, we're gonna have to take a field trip up there. I
I
mean, we're
know.
close enough.
You have to. Where are you? Where are you based?
I'm in DC.
And I'm in New York City, so
Yeah, we're
So
close.
you're close. Yeah. We're an hour and 10 minutes from New York City.
Okay, perfect.
okay. So gotta get on.
We have to
gotta
go.
get a rental car or something and get up there.
We must. We must. I'm very happy to hear that it's been a successful business. I mean, for more than 40 years. That's incredible. And I'm just very happy to hear that the animals are not stressed and it's successful and it sets a good example for a lot of farmers out there.
Agreed. And you've been like a major advocate for regenerative farming. It's essentially the whole concept that you and your daughter wanted to root this farm in, and you touched on it. Soil health is so important, not only for human health, for animal health, but also for the planet and revitalizing our ecosystem. So, can you tell us a little bit about some of the promising practices that you see in this space and what's still needed to make this more mainstream? Like, how do we scale regenerative farming?
What do we need? It's education. We need people to understand it. We still have neighbors who think that we are ruining the soil by planting all those trees. People don't know. They don't understand. All they've seen all their lives is plowing and putting fertilizer and plowing again the next year. So it's difficult when you have this lack of education in the back, and that's why we started this farm, and that's why we're opening the farm to the public. So we want to encourage would-be farmers, but also gardeners, people who have a little plot of land, and we want to show them and explain to them how it's very good for you, it's very good for the yield of the produce that you want to have, but it's most importantly very good for the soil and the planet, so they can give you the same thing and even better the year after and the year after.
It's so interesting that you mentioned people are questioning what a regenerative farm looks like, seeing trees and thinking it's bad for the soil when we have like acres and acres of land that looks exactly the same and is plowed and sprayed industrially, and we don't question that, right?
Yeah.
In Project Drawdown, one of the top 10 solutions to solving the climate crisis is silvopastures, which is the idea of incorporating trees into pastures and trees into these monocultures that we're used to in agriculture. So I love to see that you guys are doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You mentioned earlier as well that you had to convince a lot of farmers to sort of, I guess, gain traction in this farm to table space. And I'm curious to know what are some more common misconceptions about farm to table and its role in sustainability?
The misconceptions is that it's not going to be profitable, it's very difficult, and there are techniques today, and we do have electricity and we do have technology to help, and we have to use that, of course. So the misconception of being very, very manual, of course, agriculture is a manual job, but there are ways to make it a little easier. I mean, when you pasture rotate chickens every 3 days, you find ways to do it with electronets, those electric fences that are portable, that are easy to move around, that are easy to put together. And you have movable housing for the chickens, where you have adapted inside and put nests so they lay their eggs very easily in there. I mean, there are ways to make, and they go inside the house every night on their own. You have
Oh,
Bedtime.
I love that.
yeah. No, but they do. I mean, you don't need to teach them that. They do naturally. When it's dark, they go in. If you have a solar panel door, you don't need to be there to close the door. It's going to
Oh,
be
perfect.
automatic. So that's one misconception. The second misconception is that it's not profitable. It can be profitable. Of course, it's not as simple as monoculture. When you have one culture on your field, you need one set of mechanics. You do huge volume of one thing. And so in the good years, it can be fine. But now, with all that climate change, sometimes you have bad years where you have zero production.
Right.
So the profitability of farming is not insured at all, whether you do conventional or regenerative farming. I would argue, on the contrary, that with regenerative farming, because you do have several crops, you have more chances of getting your money at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's a great way to mitigate risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like diversifying your portfolio. Like you're
Yeah,
not going to just
yeah, yeah.
invest in one stock, you're going to
Literally.
invest in multiple.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and it seems like that's what regenerative agriculture is trying to show in a different way. And I feel like too, when you have more species, it's more support for the other species, and like it's just more support for the ecosystem overall. So there's clearly so many benefits to this.
Totally.
Why aren't we scaling this? Like, why are more people not doing this? Do you believe that local sourcing and regenerative ag can ever fully replace the monoculture and the globalized food supply chain that we have today?
Fully replace, I'm not sure. We do need to feed the world, and everybody has its own system. And if you want to grow cereal, you do need a lot of space, and you do have to have a certain discipline. But if you want to do cereal, you don't have to go with genetically manipulated grain. You absolutely can go with ancient grain, ancient wheat, for example, that will give you the good gluten, of course, but the good one, that is not going to promote allergy or gluten intolerant or even celiac people. When you do raise animals, make an effort in going after heritage species and not going after super genetically manipulated animals like the chickens
The broiler
that you can
chickens,
find at the
yeah.
supermarket today.
They're bred to be huge. Yeah, they're bred to grow in like 6 weeks when they're supposed to grow in like I think it's like a 6 months to a year. It's scary what we're doing to these animals, and it's sad. It's unethical in my opinion.
Yeah, but most importantly, it doesn't taste good. So what's the point? So yes, it's going to be cheaper to raise. Yes, it's going to be cheaper to buy, especially when you process them in water chilling facilities where they can pick up to 15% of their weight in dirty water.
Right.
I mean, there are ways to make things factory farm and cheaper, but it's not good nutritionally. It's not good, and nutrition is also in the taste. So for me, education is key, and we welcome the schools at the farm because of that.
Oh,
Because
that's great.
you have to
That's
start
so
with the
nice.
kids.
I would have loved that as a field trip.
For us, of course, it's very small, 14 acres, an hour away from New York. Maybe we touch the life of the maximum of 200 people every weekend, on 3 days.
It's a good amount.
Yeah, it's little by little if everybody does a mark like that. And hopefully people will go less to fast food and to foods that are not good for you and not good for the planet.
You talked about one of the most important things being taste, right, when it comes to these foods. Well, for a lot of people, the most important thing is accessibility.
Yeah.
And when we talk about hamburgers and these unhealthy foods, I mean, there's such a epidemic in America and just globally of people that are just priced out of like good quality food, priced out of regenerative agricultural food, priced out of farm to table. How do we bring those people along? How do we make this movement more accessible to people who can't afford it.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's simply education. Education, it's a question of priority. I hope to think that priorities will change little by little and that people will understand that yes, it costs a little more to buy wholesome food, but at the end you will go less to the doctor, you will have less health problems if you do that, if you use this kind of nutrition and wholesome nutrition to your kids will be healthy and have less problems than with all that sugary processed food.
I mean, sustainability is a change that is always effective in the long term across all aspects. So I'm curious to learn more about how sustainability, organic, humane, free range, these kinds of labels, right now they're on the rise in grocery stores and markets and stuff like that. How does your farm and your company ensure transparency and accountability in sourcing their items?
At D'Artagnan, it's easy. You know, we get labels from third-party organizations like Certified Humane or organizations like that, or the USDA to be able to write down organic or free range on the piece of meat or on a piece of poultry. For the produce at the farm, we are not certified in anything. We are just doing the right thing. We are not putting anything artificial, anything exterior to the soil, and we are monitoring our water constantly because it's all based on well water, just to make sure that the water has not been compromised by other things outside of our perimeter. And in that farm to table movement also, there is this dimension of proximity and seasonality. And if you decide that the first thing that you should do is that, it's very simple. It's a very good step toward the right path. Simply not to eat things that are out of season.
I'm curious, if you had to pick one, if you had to tell consumers either eat seasonally or eat locally, what would you choose?
Ooh, trick question, Nethra.
No, it's both. It's making an effort. If you're not ready to go all the way, and it's difficult to go all the way. When you live in a city and you have to feed your family and you have limited means, you have to do what you have to do. But one easy step is to try to be conscious about that, about the seasonality and the proximity of the harvest.
So true.
And that is on the label. It says where it was raised. If it was raised within 500 miles of your place, there is a big chance that it came to the store still very fresh, still with a lot of nutrients. And so it's going to be better for you and it's going to be more delicious because of that. And so seasonality follows, because if you do that, then you're not going to buy a strawberry in February, because you're not going to find on the East Coast 500 miles away, you're not going to find a strawberry. Of course, you're going to eat things that are more seasonal because of that.
Perfect.
And I understand sometimes it's limiting.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It is very hard to sort of stick to just locally sourcing your food. And I like that about farmers markets as well, is that you are already conscious that that food is locally grown, most of the time ethically, and it's in season. But at Trader Joe's, they don't tell you if it's out of season or how far it traveled. So Trader Joe's, if you're listening,
Trader Joe's.
start putting the mileage on that fruit.
Yeah, that'll honestly convince a lot of consumers. Like it's the education piece there with the labeling that can really make a huge difference. And I'm a huge believer in, like, if everyone does sustainability imperfectly, it's better than 2 or 3 people doing it perfectly. We just need to start making changes.
Yes.
ASAP.
That's a good way to put it.
Yep,
I love
yep.
it.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we've talked a lot about regenerative agriculture, education, just what it means, the labeling. Let's talk about the culinary movement and chefs. I mean, this is like how your career started, and you've moved into now being this pioneer for agriculture. But let's bring it back to that. How can chefs be change makers in the sustainability movement?
In several ways. The first way is that they represent more volume than any other consumer. They represent the number of seats that the restaurant offer. And let's face it, people cook not very often in their home, and they go very often to eat outside or to take out outside. So in that, the liaison is the chef. And so the more a chef is conscious of this, the more that chef is going to be ready to keep the people conscious of it, to maybe not educate, but at least to pass along that knowledge. If you go to brunch in the winter and in that plate of brunch you have your eggs Benedict and next to it you have a strawberry, that means that the chef does not understand that notion. And
No clue about seasonality.
yeah, and it's very silly because on top of that, it's not good. Maybe it's going to look good because it's huge, but it's going to be hollow and white in the middle and have no interest whatsoever. I don't want to fixate on strawberries, but it's a responsibility of a chef to have the best ingredients possible in the plate. You cannot do good cooking if you don't start with good ingredients. And so their responsibilities start there. And there is a natural way for them to actually do the right thing because it's their interest to bring out the best food possible on the plate.
And Nethra, I see you doing that already on your Instagram with the Lucky 3 Eats restaurant parties. I saw that you were pointing out all the stuff from your garden and where you sourced all your ingredients. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
Just had to shout you out right there.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I do some supper clubs on the side, and I'm really focused on sustainability and plant-based meals. But
Love it.
I totally agree with you, Ariane, where it's like, yeah, food tells a story. Food is a connector. Like people are always going to be interested in food, so let's use that to our advantage.
Definitely.
And yeah, chefs have purchasing power.
Vote with your dollar.
Vote with your dollar. That's our catchphrase here. Thanks, Cecilia, for bringing that up.
Oh, you're so welcome. I had to. But again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I hope everyone out there learned something today about how to vote with your dollar. And thanks for being here.
No, but thank you very much because we need people like you. We need podcasts like yours. We need to disseminate the information, and people need to listen to it and again until they register and they start doing something about it. So
Right.
Thank you.
We also believe strongly in that educational aspect, which is why we love to run this podcast to bring all different types of conversations about sustainability to listeners out there.
And come visit.
Yes, we must.
Absolutely.
We will.
I will be there.
All right.
And that's a wrap on our 90th episode. We hope this episode gave you a deeper understanding of the movement and the power of being an informed eater.
And we also want to conclude this episode with a fun segment, One Small Step, to give you, the listeners, some actionable tips to live more sustainably this month. Remember, whether you're shopping at a farmer's market or just thinking twice about where your food comes from, every small step counts. Sustainable change starts with conscious choices and voting with your dollar. So be conscious of what you are buying at the grocery store and try to buy in season. And also, maybe sign up for Nethra's sustainable exclusive dining experience.
Yes, yeah. For those of you who don't know, I started a little pop-up / supper club thing, which I mentioned earlier, but you can follow me on Lucky 3 Eats at Instagram to learn more. And just thank you so much for listening to Finers. I know some of the things that we say feel like it's intuitive. Like, of course we want to eat more sustainable, or of course we want to, shop locally. Some of these things are harder. We've talked about accessibility a bit here as well. So we keep those things in mind, and remember to have that it depends mindset and make the right choice for yourself. I think that we can really see a future, and I like to manifest and envision a future where all of these things are possible, and we're seeing them come to life so much more. And it's so great to see our interviewees, such as Ariane and other people we've had on the podcast, really live these powerful truths. So don't forget to rate, review, and share the pod with your fellow foodies and climate nerds. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to stay up to date on what we're defining. And please DM us with questions, comments, feedbacks, concerns, anything you want us to spotlight or anything you want us to know. We read all the emails.
And we're only 10 episodes away from our 100th episode.
Woo!
So stay tuned for what we've got cooking.
Oh my God.
I had to do it. Catch you next time, definers. And until then, stay curious, stay conscious, and keep defining sustainability one bite at a time.